This is January 12th of 2021. Call to order at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. If you please join me in reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll start off with the roll call.
Here.
Dan Enright,
Here.
Ryan Liston,
Yes.
John Olka,
Here.
Tom Stevens,
Here.
Eric Bosman,
Here.
Bob Kernigan,
Here.
and Tammy Bogert here.
Okay. Election of officers.
I make a motion to elect Ryan Liston for chairman.
Yes, I second that.
Thomas Burke,
Yes.
Ryan Liston,
Yes.
Dan Enright,
Yes.
On I motion to make Dan Enright vice chairman.
I second it.
Thomas Burke,
Yes.
Ryan Liston,
Yes.
Dan Enright.
Yes.
Moving on to retention of services. I believe we're Chris Burke, Engineering Services.
Make that motion.
I second it.
Who made the motion? And who seconded it?
I did, Ryan.
All right, he should second it. If technically, you only, in case of a tie break. Or,
Okay, I second.
okay,
Thomas Burke,
Yes.
Ryan Liston,
Yes.
Dan Enright,
Did everyone have a chance to read over the minutes? Thank you, Tammy, for sending those out. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from December 8th of 2020.
I'll second that.
Dan Enright,
I wasn't here, so, I don't know if that's appropriate for me. Yeah, you can approve them as long as you look them over. Okay.
Thomas Burke,
Yes.
Ryan Liston.
Yes. All right, getting into old business with the Chuck Becker. He's at 7513 West 136th Avenue.
Yes, difficult. Not much has changed since our last meeting. The planner is presented with a pretty high dollar amount to it. I know there's supposed to be some internal discussions with staff about budgetary constraints in 21. We did get that budget at about 5 o'clock today. It's not nearly as high as it was said at the last meeting, so that's a problem for a project this size. So I don't know if Jill's gonna comment on that or not, but other than that, nothing's really changed.
Don, I missed the first part of what you said.
Sorry. So we discussed this at last meeting and kind of went through what was required to kind of do it right, and it was pricey.
Right.
Town staff is gonna go back and look at the budgets, what's in the budget for 21. And we got that information about 5 o'clock today. Not nearly as high as what was said, so
The balance. was
the balance.
Not nearly as high.
no.
Okay,
So that provides an issue for a project of this size. Right now, it's likely going to cost more to do this project than is in that budget, so. Yeah, That's really all I can say about it.
Yeah, well, reading the minutes, that seems like an impossible project.
It does, and I think other discussions have to be had about the project, potentially about property purchase. Because the property in question is probably worth less than the project will cost.
Exactly.
So there are some other discussions that town staff likely has to have from a policy perspective. And that may be a better direction.
Thank you.
Yeah, I say we keep it as old business and touch base on it next meeting.
Okay.
And discuss it from there. Moving on to Nick Terry and Ronald Costello, 14806 B Carey Street. And the Costellos are located at 14736 Carey Street.
I believe an exhibit was distributed at the last meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It was, we didn't touch base on where it started, where it ended.
Okay, we have a good idea of where it starts and where it ends. The length of pipe is roughly 860 feet, which encompasses about, I think, 14 different units, because there are duplexes out there, so about 7-ish lots, actually more than that, 1, 2, 16 units, we'll say. 16, yeah, 16, one's vacant. Within that limit, there are numerous fence lines, numerous landscaping beds, a pool, and then also probably likely several utilities. We haven't called in locates yet, but you're gonna have to deal with that too. It's in the same exact corridor. So to replace this, it's gonna be messy. You're gonna need a lot of coordination with residents to move all those appurtenances where they can get in there. So we have decent access. We can either come off a vacant parcel with permission, or we can actually go through a town park parcel up at the north end. Should be up here. That would gain us access to the rear yard easement. But it's essentially all the way down to lot 63, which is this vacant parcel.
Oh, wow.
So it's substantial. It's pretty much an entire block. We're under the impression that the structures can be salvaged and we just have to install new pipe. But I mean, in reality, the structures aren't the large cost. The large cost is the pipe. It's over half of the project cost, as you can imagine, for something that long. So not cheap. I mean, not to get into the estimate, but call it high 100,000.
800, 900,000,
No,
under 200,000.
under 200,000.
How do we come up with it? Like, you think the pipe collapsed out there?
There was clearly a bedding issue. Actually, when I was going through some of the old Lindsway files we have from like 2005, it was noted, and I was actually looking for something else. I just kind of stumbled upon it. It had actually failed during inspection a couple of times. It failed mandrel testing. So, but then we have Public Works information says it passed. So I'm not sure what happened.
I know there was discussion that one of the ready-mix concrete trucks was drove over it.
I mean, it clearly was a bedding issue. We have a letter to that respect, actually, that the bedding material wasn't properly compacted before it was driven over. I mean, you could tell that from the video. You wouldn't even need backup. That's exactly what happened. Pipes work great if you bed them properly and you backfill them properly. If you do not, then they are very susceptible to collapsing.
This is in Lindsway.
This is the rear of Lindsway, yeah, the
And
western
we have
property
no
line.
way to draw on any money because we.
That thing's
only
long
have the
gone.
Money to do the paving of the road.
Well, we didn't pull all the money. That was a weird bond. That bond had weird language in it and is one of the reasons we require letter of credits now. that you needed to complete your construction before you pulled on it. So that's why that was such a, emergency type project. We needed it completed and invoiced before we could pull on it. I remember driving up to Chicago and actually going to the bank with all the invoices in hand and pulling it the day it expired. So there were several things that we would like to do if we had the time. That's what I was searching for, because there's lights out there that aren't out there, that are part of the plan, but they're not built. That's the reason I was going through our file. I just kind of stumbled on this. So that's exactly why some stuff is built out there and some stuff isn't, especially in the southern third is where those lights are, because that was the last unit to go and the least improved when Hawk went bankrupt effectively. But also the reason we don't accept bonds anymore, one of them. So if that one moves forward, again, it's not cheap and it's not going to be easy to access it. We're going to have to basically talk to every homeowner out there.
Yeah.
And have them remove fences. I mean, we can remove them. It's not, I mean, it's in a giant easement back there. So technically it's the homeowner's responsibility to take it down and put it back. But yeah, if we can't get them to move them, then it's a problem.
They would be put back where they're supposed to be, not where they are.
No, I think it's been town policy over the years, and correct me if I'm wrong, to allow fences and easements, but there hasn't been a lot of language in some of those fence permits that says it's a responsibility to move it if we need access. I think there's a push now to revise that permit to state that, clearly. But no, there's fences and easements all throughout town.
Yeah, I'd probably say half the backyard is.
Yeah, this is a really big easement too. I think it's a 30-foot easement with a spike strip back there, which is actually not part of their property. There's a 10-foot wide, what we call a spike strip back there, that is actually still owned by an entity that kind of took over for Hawk, which is this little guy, which has its own fun issues. But it goes all the way up through Ledstone and then all the way out to Parrish.
I've been out to the Costello property and their whole garden bed or backyard is caving in because of this.
And I think they're 69. Are they down here? There you go. 68. 68. So yeah, they have one of those large landscape beds. So there are some sinkholes that are forming around some of the manholes. I think some of the joints have failed as well. And then obviously some of the tops of pipe have collapsed as well. So you're going to see kind of a combination of sinkholes throughout, depending on where exactly that pipe's damaged. But based on what the public works said, it's pretty much all got to go. I think we can live with the structures. If we decided to move forward with the project, we'd probably want to inspect all of them just to make sure. I mean, the beauty of the HDPE pipe that we'd replace it with is pretty easy to install. It's just, there's so much of it. So the quantity is huge. So
So the subgrade failed.
it's not the
The
bedding, I don't
connection,
think. It was the
you know.
backfill. So the problem with HDPE pipe, if you don't backfill properly and with the correct material, you can basically put point loads on it, which will crush it. And if you don't backfill it enough before you drive over, it'll just crush the whole thing.
I understand that.
Yeah.
You know, that's the whole method of burying pipe correctly.
Yeah. So we still do not allow HDPE pipe within public right of ways. For this very reason, with structural backfill on it. I mean, NDOT allows it on their right of way. So it is useful. You just have to install it properly. And it's gotten better over, the last 15 years. There's different types of HDPE pipe. I don't even know what this was. When it comes to the cheap stuff that we call single wall, which is really flimsy, but it shouldn't be that big. So
That's that black stuff with the ribs.
yep, black rib stuff.
Single wall.
Single wall is the real cheap stuff you can find at Menards. double walled HDPE actually has what they call H25 loading capabilities, which is, you can stick it under a road and it should be fine with, 3 feet of cover. But like you said, it's not like it's considered a flexible pipe, unlike a rigid pipe, which is concrete or ductile. Even PVC has this issue at some point. PVC in its own nature is stronger than HDPE.
That's a green pipe you're talking about, right?
Green and blue, and you see it white, and you see it all different colors depending on what year and what type. So yeah, I mean, it has its uses, but like I said, if you don't use it properly, I mean, CVS is another case of it as well. They had an underground, they call ADS storage system, and they didn't properly backfill it, it collapsed. That's a private application, but same theory.
So how bad is this for the area over there? What
I mean, there's
harm is it doing to the
it's
residents?
far enough from the homes, I think. It's just, yeah, the rear yards are gonna be, you're gonna see sinkholes forming. I mean, I think it's probably still works. It's probably a little oversized. It takes in some of the drain tiles from the west. There are some pictures that showed it tied in, some of the drain tiles from the Hughesman parcel. And it also takes overland flow from them as well. I haven't heard any incidents of flooding. I still think it's working, on relatively low flows. I mean, I think it's still functioning, say, to the midpoint of the pipe. Just once you get to the midpoint, it's snapped in areas. Completely collapsed.
So how should we prioritize this with everything else we got going?
Good question. I mean, it needs to be taken care of. Does it need to be taken care of right now? Probably not, but I don't know how much worse it's going to get. Once it keeps seeing fill and once all those joints start failing even more, you're going to start getting more and more sinkholes. There's no weight on it right now, minus, what's back there. Landscape beds, fences aren't going to do anything to it, but I mean, it's far enough away from the structure. There's no endangerment from that perspective, I don't think, but it definitely needs to be dealt with at some point though.
I know Randy wants the storm board to make decisions on some of these projects, so that's why I phrased the question, what's the priority of this? But we also came thinking we had a lot more money in the stormwater than what we did, and that's why I had Jen prepare this, because it's not as much money as I thought it was.
I mean, if you did this type of project, it would pretty much expound your current fund. It's almost right in line with what's there.
Again,
It's likely been crushed since shortly after it was installed. It's likely to be in some form or fashion in this condition for almost 15 years now. And it's only showing up because the joints are starting to peel away from the structures. You're starting to see more sinkholes around the structures. And inevitably, as some of those tops of pipes start collapsing even more, you're going to just start getting dirt starting to fall into them, and you're going to start seeing other sinkholes here and there. Like I said, I think we're further away from the houses themselves that the houses aren't in any danger. And I still think it's functioning, at least in some decent form, pushing water through it, but there's going to be a time that you don't know when.
What happens if the kid goes out there, those sinkholes, is bad enough
That's-
that the kid could fall in?
And like
Yeah.
you just said, I mean, if
Yeah.
it was approved by Public Works, then town becomes a liability.
I mean, yeah, it's a public storm sewer.
Yeah.
It is an easement. It was part of the, performance bonds for this unit, and it was approved. I'm not really sure how, because it clearly had issues. It wasn't just this line that it had mandrel failures. There were other lines in here that had failures. So I don't know how they inevitably got to pass. No clue. But it got stripped out of the bond, from what I can tell. I don't know why. Because the utility contractor who did this is also no longer in business. The company called VNS, like sewer and excavating, I think. They're long gone. They haven't been in operation for quite a while.
So Don, would more engineering as far as this project goes into a planning type of a phase and possibly a due proceed. Is that in order here, or should we wait till
The engineering is relatively straightforward. Like I said, we want to probably inspect all the manholes that are in that quarter and make sure they're still usable. If
Okay.
they are, then it's really just a point-to-point replacement. We can put together, you don't really need to put together plans for it per se. It's going to be a one-sheet plan set, if you want to call it that, and it's going to have to be bid. It's likely going to be above 150. But I mean, from that perspective, engineering wise, it's pretty simple and ready to go. It's just a matter of coordinating with landowners
okay,
and getting, because some of these fence lines are pretty old too and not in the best shape. So once you strip them out, they're not gonna go back very well. It's hard to believe that a subdivision of this age has stuff like that, but some of these houses have been there for quite a while. There were some of the first houses built out there, I think. Or some of these duplex lines.
Are these structures concrete?
Yeah, the manhole structures are concrete. Yeah, all the pipe is HDPE.
Can it be scheduled during a certain time of year? Because I noticed you can use the edge of that barn field as access.
Well, no, we can't. That's
No?
all private property. That spike strip that I pointed out is owned by Diamond Pete Homes, which is they absorbed some of Hawk back in the day. And yeah, they call it a spike strip for a reason, because it just throws some curveballs every time we want to go across it or access it. I mean, inside of that, there's a 30-foot easement all the way down that block is where the pipe is in. It's a drainage and utility easement, so we're going to run a utility. There are telephone pedestals out there and cable pedestals we know of. And they're right on the same line. They're not off the line by more than a couple feet. So we're going to run into them.
and the actual position of it could be right over the pipe?
Yeah, well, yes. And then the pedestals will spray up the houses. So depending exactly where the pedestals are and where the feeds go into the homes, we may have to cross those as well. So it's not going to be fun. And some of our unit prices are higher to reflect that this could be a slower project than it would be if it was just out in the open.
If it was to go, can it be done in like phases, or you just gotta do it all in one shot?
I mean, you could do it. I mean, the beauty we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 manholes in that corridor. So think of that split, 860 feet kind of split. You can do it. I mean, if you would like to bid it out as one project, if you don't, then your prices are going to go even higher. And you'd like to just get in there and get out, not have to wait to do one segment and do another segment. Because I mean, it does us no good to have the guy in the middle, 2 residents say, sure, you can go in there, but we can't get in between these houses because they're super tight. We can't send equipment between them without doing some damage. So, and then you have the fences going right down the line too. So you have to access it from the back, likely from a town-owned parcel from the north. So access is the biggest thing, for sure.
So
Oh yeah, your prices will skyrocket. Not skyrocket, but you're gonna be double dinged on mob and demob, which you don't typically like to do. Yeah, I mean, if it's a monetary thing, that would be the only reason. But from a sheer construction point, you'd want to do it all at once.
I think you need to go through all these and then try and determine to prioritize which one is affordable within the money that we have available.
This may be a part of to get shovel ready.
Yeah.
Get Don to finish up his plans, we can start getting notices out to property owners, because even if it is a year out to do this, that way they know it's coming, but maybe they won't put another fence up or something else in that area either
Mhm.
that will hinder us, so that way we can get going on that, and get the, this has been on our list for a little while now, but at least get it to where it's shovel ready.
There's no monies coming down the line anywhere. is there?
Well, we already have that, the financial ones we're looking at this, we actually, I had estimated it a little bit higher than that. So she was looking at, this is a much larger project, so being able to reduce that down a little bit, will help. This project can bring up and tying it in with road projects and everything else that the community is doing. We're gonna start piecing all of those pieces together, plus the customer side, financial advice, to look at capital plans moving forward. will also help with these.
Well, and I think the ecosystem project's gonna wrap up here pretty quick. That should be under budget. So that encumbrance should be less than we know. Wood to Cedar Creek's gonna be slightly under budget, but not by a lot. Yeah, second phase of that, so it doesn't really do a whole lot, but I mean, we can bring it up to, bid level. It's not gonna take much. I mean, to give you an idea, there's 16-inch parcels, 16-inch units, and only 6 of them don't have a fence line. So deal with 10 of them. And some of the ones that don't have the fence line, like Mr. Costello, he has a huge landscape bed back there. So
He's got railroad ties. And everything.
yeah, so just goes into the fence line doesn't mean it's not going to be an issue. I think lot 65 is our favorite one because it has nothing. So, which ironically I think is, yes, it is Mr. Thierry's line. He doesn't have anything back there. So good for him.
So would this be a project to pursue in the second quarter of 2021?
We could. I mean, it being a stormwater line too, it's still active. You certainly don't want to do it when it's, the wet season. That, that could delay it even more. But I mean, once your fences are down, if we get, generally this stuff can go in pretty quick as long as we don't have a lot of utility issues. They likely can install it pretty quick once everything gets out of the way. And if we're going from structure to structure that are max 2 lots long, we can pretty much stay out of wet weather if we have to.
What kind of pipe are you gonna put in?
What kind of pipe? Same stuff.
The same stuff that's in there?
It's cheaper, it's quicker to go in. As long as they bed it right, it works just fine. So it's outside of public right away. Yeah, as long as you bed it right, and if they're working, either north to south, south to north, it shouldn't be over it. It should be okay.
Double wall, right?
Yeah, double wall. We're gonna use single wall. We rarely use it ever. Or anything. It is a 36-inch pipe. I don't even know if they make single wall. This big of a pipe. So
How large is it?
36.
Oh, wow. Is it tied to the street at all?
Hmm?
Is it tied to the street at all?
It does. Once it hits the town park parcel up here, it beelines right, and then it switches material, I think, as it gets into the hook right away. These 2 structures are here.
So we could go in the easement that way?
Yeah, that's likely where we would start. Either there or the vacant lot still owned by the builder down at the south end. This
Oh,
guy in
okay.
140th Place.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lesniak Roofing and Construction. I think it's still vacant. I mean, we also could get permission from Diamond Peak to potentially use the spite strip as well, but I mean, the fences need to move regardless.
One of the things we could look at too, is possibly placing financing. Some of the capital items that we can ultimately so tying all of that together, where traditionally we won't buy out a dump truck in 2021 or 2023, we would finance it. So third portion of a project, if it was split between MDH, wastewater, and storm, they wouldn't necessarily pay that third of a project, the $20,000 or $40,000 portion all in 1 year. It would be financed over the course of several years, but what year are you anticipating doing that financing? So that's some of the stuff too, has been working on and analyzing the stormwater. So we've always looked at it as cash, but it could possibly be that could be some financing for various purchases if we needed to do that. That's one of the ways we can look at it. Which is something we usually don't talk about very often at this point, but we will need to, that price could come from.
And well, the only problem there is, you gotta pay that money back.
Well, yeah, but it is, it is the reality. We usually do leases on vehicles and equipment where right now interest rates are pretty appealing.
Yeah.
We usually don't just outright buy a $200,000 note.
Do we know how much we take in approximately per month on a stormwater fee basis?
We don't have that.
Just curious how much it grows over the year. As we progress over 21.
Well, if we issue, let's say 200 occupancy, all 200 of those homes that actually occupied, over the course of the year, that's $10 per house.
Well, I just mean overall, like how much do we take? I know we're growing, but I'm just curious how much we take from a monthly perspective, just from stormwater fees, from commercial, residential, how much actually comes in? How much that,
As well as the stormwater public works project versus equipment, so you can see the overall capital plan.
because the operating budget doesn't really revert back to this budget until the end of the year, if there's anything left. That's correct.
I would have to.
Okay, I'd say, what do you need, 30, 60-day notice to the homeowners to get their fences, sheds, landscaping cleared out?
I think you probably want to maybe set, if you want to do the project, set the time frame on when you want to do it. And then, yeah, back it out from there.
Okay,
So certainly want to give them enough time to move it.
so do we need to wait for town administration to kind of finalize the plans in order to make a decision at this point for future projects?
We can.
I think what the town wants is, like, if he gives you a recommendation, then you guys decide what you want to do. Because they've appointed you here to make decisions.
Okay,
They don't want the things coming back to them.
Yeah, so,
okay, then I'm gonna make a decision and make a motion.
okay, there you go.
That the first part of this project is to get the homeowners involved in the project. Meaning that they know full well what the town requires them to do before this project can proceed with money. If I have a second or not, I don't know.
I second to involve the homeowners. And then your second part?
Well, then we proceed, if, we went through this last year or for 3 years with another project. The Woods of Cedar Creek, people coming in here every month crying and complaining, and we put the horse before the cart. And then when the final project was approved, they didn't want it. So I believe that, first of all, we should get the homeowners and say, look, we want to repair this. We want to repair this project. We want to make it good, but we need your cooperation first. That's my motion.
I totally agree. I second that motion.
I agree.
a great reference point. As far as the notice to the homeowners, is that gonna come, do we need to go to the attorney and do it, or do we just do it as the town?
We can do that in December. If I could ask you to amend your motion to include
Absolutely.
having John with his staff and developing a timeline for construction.
Absolutely.
So that way, when we're having a meeting with the homeowners, we've got a timeline. Then we'll have a timeline for construction, a timeline for funding, when we're planning on doing this, and that all ties together. Because this really sounds like a late July, August project when traditionally we don't have the big rains, the ground is hard, it's dry. But people are gonna be wanting to plant gardens, do any improvements, so we wanna make sure that they're well aware of that before they do anything.
I'll make that amendment to the motion that Jill said as well. Yes, that would be good.
I'll second that motion to include the town and the planning staff to properly plan around this project.
Is this an in-house project?
It's gotta
No.
be
It'll be bid out. It'll be bid. Unless you guys want to do it.
Well, there, that goes back to Jill with the equipment then, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then we're gonna wanna bring it all.
You got a dream, dream big.
So we need to vote on that.
Vote on both of them.
On both of them.
You have to vote on the first one and then the amendment.
Take a vote on the notification to involve and notify the homeowners. Aye, Brian,
Aye.
Yes.
then put it up for vote to the amendment to include town staff as far as dates and project start. Planning around it so that funds can be applied to this project. Roll call,
Comfort,
Yes.
Brandon Wright,
Yes.
Ryan,
yes. So we'll bring that up again next meeting, see where everything's at. Moving on to update items, 137th and Lowerman.
I'll address A and B together, kind of together. So that subdivision master plan should be done by the end of the month, probably. Then it's kind of up to you. Do you want to break them out and do them as singular projects, or but that may fall on street committee, or keep them as part of the overall subdivision plan? Right now, they are singular storm sewer systems that would address each of these two areas. They can be done by themselves, but there's also a roadway component that goes with them. So it's a little confusing on who would make that decision.
Seems like you ought to put them together and cost less.
Well, I'm saying, would you rather take care of these two items from this perspective singularly, or would you keep them as part of the overall subdivision project? You break them out by themselves. And they would be entirely different. This 137 Loudon would be one project and Sherman would be another, because they're on other sides of the lake.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So they would be totally separate projects. We can break those numbers out and give a cost estimate for them. And you can do them by themselves, but they would have a road component. Or you can keep them as 137 Lowerman's part of Birch, which is part of Noble Oaks. The other one is part of the Shades, overall kind of large project, but they're large projects. So it's kind of a policy decision on, if you want to break them out to address these two items or keep them on a long-term planning basis. That's how they get fixed, put it that way. Yeah, we have a meeting on Thursday, sort of with the tree committee, not really. More staff, but yeah, next time the street committee meets, that's certainly something we brought up.
Is it more economical to do it one way or the other?
Yes and no. As part of the subdivision plan, it's more than just drainage, it's infrastructure as a whole. So we're looking at it from roads and curves perspective as well. It would be advisable to just take care of everything all at once, because you're going to be ripping up the road to put in these systems. So you might as well just reconstruct the road at the same time. Yes, it would be cheaper if you just did the stormwater component, but in the long run, if you came back and did the streets, there would be some overlap.
I got you.
So, but it's a more expensive project. So yes, it's economical in some ways, but constructability wise, we'd rather just do it all at once.
Okay, so do we need to vote on this?
I don't know.
You're talking about making a capital project?
Yeah, like these are typically part of capital improvement projects where we do entire subdivisions of South Shore and High Grove. You know, whereas we're taking little pieces of those subdivisions and doing them on their own potentially. So, I mean, I don't have the actual dollar values for each of these singular projects, but I can break them out and they give you a better idea of what you're looking at.
Now that I think would be a town decision, right?
Well, they can consider doing it as an individual smaller stormwater project. By smaller, not necessarily smaller, like $100,000. But if they think something, the church maybe had included these areas, all the areas that down in that they estimate to
These are the two priority areas.
two priority areas up to the 30%.
Yep.
For the council to consider the next larger capital infrastructure projects that we do, curbs, gutters, stormwater, all of it.
Everything, lighting.
You know, just
yeah.
like we did High Grove and South Shore. So if that, the timeline where this would be more economical to do is a larger project versus do it and break it out as a smaller component. And then ultimately stormwater is getting most. Because if you rip up the road as part of a stormwater project, stormwater technically should pay for that payment.
And I don't think we got the money to pay for
Is,
roads.
Well, back in, John said he's still working on finalizing these, so these two projects seem to be something that we will be bringing back in February to you
right,
with a more.
I mean, as far as making a decision right now is not imperative to, what I'd like to know, you referred to the the Noble Oaks master plan. Is that funded and ready for construction? Or is this
No.
still a planning phase, a wish item? You know, what is it?
So
I don't know anything about it.
I mean, we're essentially putting together a long range planning document effectively. We put together a capital improvement kind of plan in 2010, which has driven a lot of the subdivision reconstructions already done over the last, decade. Like Meyer Manor and South Shore, High Grove, they're all included. Cedar Point Park, Oak Shades, a lot of the bigger ticket subdivisions were kind of included there with other road improvements as well. Is that plan has been kind of gone through and there's only been a couple left in there. We're essentially updating that plan to include other subdivisions that haven't been improved. So Noble Oaks is one of them.
We
Shades.
did pay Noble Oaks Road.
We did. So we paved the south lobe of Noble Oaks, which is essentially south of 141st to 142nd, this little kind of mini block. It's kind of the southern third of the overall subdivision. That was done merely as a Band-Aid to keep the roads in decent condition until we essentially will do it again, reconstruct everything. That was just done because the roads were in pretty poor shape. So, but no, Noble Oaks is one of them, and then Shades, which is where the Sherman is. Those were two subdivisions that were kind of noted as priority subdivisions. There's 7 sections of that plan, so there's 5 other subdivisions or areas that are also included that. Those are brought to 30% plan so we can start right away, or not right away, utility coordination. Because NIPSCO has been slow lately. So we're trying to get ahead of that so they don't delay any of our projects in the future. So
Is there a major difference in timeline of these projects if they're broken down separately?
that I don't know. That becomes a policy and funding decision about when they're earmarked to go to construction. They're not cheap. They're multi-million-dollar projects. I couldn't tell you if one is higher than the other. Those were just the two identified by the street committee that were the top two.
In
And when-
2017, we did the stormwater bond for the stormwater components of the hydro, South Shore, and a portion of Parish Avenue. So that bond that we took out and the timing of when that bond will go off book, or do we refund the bond, basically like refinancing the mortgage and include another project? They've been doing these about every 5 years, 2012, 2017, well, that was 2007, 8. I started here, so I'm not quite sure on the date. But it seems to be about a rolling 5 years, so that's why they're updating the capital plan of the next projects that we're gonna do with the larger components. So having a financial advisor look at those once we have rough estimate cost and the timing of that financing is something that's a little out of my hands right now until we determine what the costs are in the next step. So that's some of where the street committee and the town council and stormwater kind of cross.
So what you're suggesting is,
I don't know. That's my point.
I mean,
If there's no
I-
project to tie this into,
I would at least wait till next month. We can bring broken out costs for those two systems. And you can figure it out. I mean, they're singular systems. They're not tied to large trunk storm sewers that service other parts of the subdivision. Like Sherman, for instance, is a dead end street, 141st North. So it's its own system that will be put in with its own, pretty much its own outlet. Same with Birch and 137 to Mowerman. It's a circular system that goes down Sleepy Hollow. They're not dependent on doing, a huge system in Noble Oaks. They're kind of separate. Just on the nature of how the subdivisions are constructed. So there are ones you can break out, but then they include a roadway component, which makes them more costly, but you're doing everything at once.
so should we make a recommendation that we break out the closest project? I mean, is that what the town wants us to do
I
in
mean,
terms of money? Because we don't spend money, the council does.
I think it'd be helpful to have those numbers. Where we go from there and whose responsibility it is to yay or nay that, we can figure that out.
So he's suggesting waiting till next month, right?
Yeah, we can break out those numbers for those two separate, for the Sherman system and the 137th Mowerman system as it's part of this plan and say it's gonna cost X amount of money. Well, that's probably more than Stormboard has. Is that more of a street committee project and do you coordinate? Or is the street committee is it the street committee issue period?
Because your recommendation ultimately should be for the town council to include this project as a larger town project. And that's what we've done with a couple of them where
Yeah,
we know it has to have that larger component. And unfortunately, the funding is not necessarily available to do this as a standalone project. So that's where we have to get these to the next step and what Don is looking at and getting us numbers to determine if that's the direction we're gonna head.
that's all you can do at this moment is get some better information in order to make a decision.
yeah, and I'll bring that next month.
Okay. All right, so moving on to Public Works Project, Jacob Beeman, 9208 West 142nd Place.
Did you skip Pam and Mark Alcott?
That's the same.
They're,
A and
They
B,
were in
yeah,
there. Okay.
they're in that Sherman one. Veman stuff is pretty much done now. Town legal staff submitted the approved easement docs back to us this afternoon. So it's now the matter of just getting Mr. Beeman to sign it and it will be a spring project.
Okay. Moving on to Robin and Jesse Albano, 12836 Hess Street. I know there were some updates that happened over the holidays, I want to say. But maybe
Wow.
December seems like so long ago.
Is there any, I don't know if there's any updates on it anymore. I think we were just passing on it.
I apologize. I thought we had email conversations on that.
No problem. Tim may have gone out and looked at it.
Rick went out there on 12/9.
He didn't see any issues with it, right?
Can't read fast enough.
Brian, I think I got this in the comment.
Yes.
Tim reported that he has looked at the Albano property several times and has previously reported that there is no drainage problem there for the town to resolve. The property is graded in accordance to the subdivision plans and no surrounding property is negatively impacting the Albano property. It appears to be the situation where we are simply going to have to inform the homeowner that there is no problem and we will not be attempting any kind of repair. It seems to be a perceived problem as opposed to an actual problem.
Okay, then.
Yeah, I would. I assume that they were, that this has been, this is the answer that has been given to the Albanos.
That,
I don't want to assume anything, but
I will.
okay, just because, so that they're in the know, but we can follow up on that next time. Moving on to the Nick 10813 West, 134th place.
I believe that final grading was done right before the holidays. Myself, Tim, Rick, and Danny from PGX were out there. Danny had his equipment and the fence was removed along this L. And he was instructed to basically chop that little mound up and get basically a grade to the south. As far as I know, it's done.
Moving on to Martin Ryan, 8320 Raven Way.
Also done. Just waiting to get spring rains to see how it works.
Okay, so he hasn't said anything.
He's only come to one time, I think,
Okay.
almost a year ago.
I believe there was Susan Pro. She also lives in Windsor. She also lives on Cary Street, I believe. I believe there was some conversations with her.
I believe that she came to town council, I believe, and I believe that's been resolved as well.
Rick and Tim have met out on the property with her
Mhm.
and had some communication with her in that matter as far as being a stormwater board. Not a stormwater.
Right. But Don had said all along.
The developer issue.
The
Well,
builder and
and
developer.
part of it was that looking at the property from the perspective of the actual lay of the land, how, and out there, the soil water.
Basement flooding was the rear patio door.
Something about putting a stone door in there.
Yeah.
for those updates. Now open for public comment. I apologize. Yes, approach the podium and state your name and address.
Hey, Richard Czar, 10905 West 129th Avenue. I guess I've been hearing that you might be redoing 129th Avenue this year.
Jim's going to answer that.
That is correct.
Okay, have you looked at the street engineering?
Yes,
Mhm.
that engineered and designed and looked at by John all the time.
Okay, well, I guess one of the issues I have, I know the fire hydrant, when they flush it,
Mhm.
comes down the street, it's taking out our driveway. So I don't know where all your, if you're gonna put ditches in or whatever.
It's not really a drainage project. It's more of a, just a reconstruction, we call it a modified reconstruction. So there won't be a huge drainage component to it, especially down in that low area. As far as hydrant flushing, I have no idea.
You have
That'd be
to
those
there
two
to
guys.
see it, 'cause when we get
Yeah.
ready to flush it out, because it's quite a ways from the driveway,
Mm-hmm.
but it rolls down the street, and it goes into our driveway, and it's been cutting into ruts over the years.
Okay.
I just kinda keep filling it in with the rock.
We have a small pay item for some kind of outside edge of pavement grading we can clean it up with. But mostly it's, we'll be replacing some driveway culverts, but that's about it. As far as a stormwater component.
Okay, like which sides,
It's isolated. So we're only replacing ones that are in poor condition, which is probably half of them.
okay, well, we don't really have a culvert's halfway down.
Yeah, we're not touching that one.
Because that's where we get a lot of rain too.
Yeah,
You've seen that, because we walked that before.
yeah, and I think he's actually right where we pulled that restrictor. Over here.
Does the issue only happen when we're doing hydrant flushing?
Yeah, but you know,
I mean, or a major rain.
or the major rains we get, I get an awful
Okay.
lot of rain that comes. And I'm not sure where it's coming from, but the neighbor has a pond. But it comes through, but it goes over the driveway, the heavy rain.
Well, that should be, the overtopping should be taken care of now. That's where we moved that restrictor.
But if you, Eric, if you could bring, and Tom, can you bring this back to the water department and let them know that when they do flush that hydrant in the area, maybe there's something. we can do.
Yeah, just divert it. I mean, I don't have a problem. I know what it's all about when they do that.
But if it, this will make them aware of the issue.
Is that hydrant on the north side of the road?
That's on the north side, I'm
Right.
on the south side.
Yeah, you're on the south side.
So it's coming across the road, it rolls down the road. And it just kind of follows it into the driveway.
Kind of leans towards south.
Yeah,
Super, okay. Yeah, I mean, your driveway issue, hopefully that's resolved because the homeowner, your neighbor was instructed to remove that restrictor, which should prevent it from overtopping.
And I was told that was done.
Yeah, that's done.
yeah, because the amount of water that's gone through there over the years,
Oh, there's a lot of water tributary to that ditch line.
yeah, because it's already exposed, cables from AT&T. I had Julie out there about a year and a half ago, and I had to redo them all. They
Yeah.
were all exposed. Because for maybe a ditch that's, 6 inches, like 3 feet.
Yeah, it's got some pretty good pitch on it though, doesn't it? It's got some pretty good fall on it from east to west, I
Well,
think.
I let everything grow out around it just because it's from a landscape architecture. As, at a workshop that I attended a few years ago, with the Illinois Parks and Recreation, told me to let it grow. And he told me go let it grow 50 to 100 feet on both sides to keep it, not just probably about 5 to 10 feet.
Mhm.
But, that's kind of interest too, because I get water popping up around the yard yet. I had the basement fixed.
Yeah, you and I, we spoke about that.
and That's, so far it's been dry, but I know the water table's gotta be coming up. Now, a friend of mine that worked for the water department in Calumet Park, then I dug a couple holes to see why, we can find out if there's any broken tile, but we haven't found any yet. It's just water that just comes up out of the ground when we get the rain. So I got like a hole about that big, and every time we get the heavy rain, it's like a swimming pool on it. And that's uphill, not downhill.
It's either a tile or a perched groundwater, something through there. I think that's what we decided last time.
Yeah, because the other thing too is the electrical pole, because that's on an angle.
that's underwater too, and I get the heavy rain. So I don't know if that's slowly going over. That's why I'm gonna have NIPSCO come out and take a look at it.
Yeah, it'd be a NIPSCO
Yeah,
problem to
yeah.
reset it. Yeah, they'd have to reset it if it's their pole.
It
So
doesn't-
there's a Comcast.
Doesn't a
Technically,
lot
it's
of
my fault,
water
'cause it's
come
in-
from Vanco subdivision over that way?
Um,
I thought we redid that.
he's upstream of that.
He's upstream
The
of that.
Venco, that big pipe kind of comes out right here. It kind of follows this line and then pitches in here, then it goes north into what's going to be a future subdivision. I forget the name of this, but Shillings on this parcel.
Yeah, 'cause it's-
Oakwood.
Oakwood, there you go. So, yeah, all this water comes from Glen Oak subdivision in this area, kind of northwest of the high school. That'll come this way.
We have 111 units on it. Oakwood.
Oakwood, yeah, that's supposed to come back to council or to commission this year.
That's the property north.
Yes, this highlighted.
That's gonna be a new subdivision.
Out of curiosity, is there a plan when they're gonna start it, or? this is gonna-
I've just heard rumors that they're likely going to start this year. I don't know when though.
Is there being touched with all of us?
That's actually been platted already, I believe.
Well, I'm not talking about the subdivision. the plat-
Oh, 120th, yeah, yeah. That's likely gonna go early summer. May, June, probably, would be my guess.
Okay, curious.
Yeah, there's a finite limit of when it has to go out, so it'll likely go out May, June. Be my
So the
guess.
state of Indiana is paying for 50% of it based upon, that's the reason why they raised the gasoline tax from 10 cents a gallon.
Yeah.
And then they increase it by 1 penny every year thereafter, I think, for 5 years.
Yeah, the entire stretch from Fairbanks to 41 will be redone.
Okay, be interesting, because once they start building all that, all the work that build a home.
Well,
Before they be coming out.
we
Right
should
now,
be,
we got-
we should be done by the time they start, so.
Because right now, we got the tractor trailers that keep coming down 129th Avenue.
It'd be nicer now.
For them,
Yeah.
The only problem is we get the speeders driving down there.
I was driving down there,
So it's not as.
I think I was at a wake at Verdance, and I took that road, and I had a cop from Illinois follow me, and I was driving 10 miles an hour because it's a horrible road.
We should put speed bumps in.
But it's not, no, this is the
Yeah.
bar.
Huh?
Can you zoom in? We're just trying to place this. Please.
What was your address again?
How far? Which way?
You're good. So it's just before the train tracks there.
Yeah, train tracks here.
If you come out 41.
That's the funeral home. And then the
Ah.
storage units are here.
Thank you.
So it's behind this industrial area,
Shillings also.
on 41, oh, that's good to know.
What?
Nothing, I was.
Oh.
We've done it.
Out of curiosity, the runoff that we get that goes in front of my house, where's actually that coming from?
Where's it coming from?
Yeah.
It's all east of you. This line. Glen Oaks, I believe this pond outlets into Glen Oaks and down. Pretty much this entire area. Huh?
Run around along the railroad track?
Yeah, you'll get some along the railroad track that comes to that as well. And then there's a large culvert on the railroad tracks.
Audio equipment or something? It's a- it's like,
Like, going down
along
there,
this building.
that really-
Probably not. Their northern parking lot would be about here, so that may be redirected slightly, but I think a lot of that drains north, so. Some of them may be turned into their basins down on 133rd, but, and there's also a basin here, so slightly.
As MacArthur School came in for permits, yeah.
We just gonna.
Right, I'm told they want to start construction this spring. They better get in here.
I didn't know they wanted to do anything.
Yeah, they're going to move the gym up to the front of the consume some of that parking. They're gonna move the cafeteria into the old gym. They're gonna add 10 new classrooms. And then they're going to bring the people that live in Center Township and St. John to MacArthur. And the rumor is they're gonna take Copper Creek and bring them. Timothy Ball and MacArthur both are gonna have like 700 population for kids.
Nice. Good for them. Yeah, they're all centered, right?
When's this happening?
I was told this spring,
Oh, boy.
so, but they haven't been to the town yet.
That's about it.
I'm gonna ask you if you had any other questions or comments. Kind of switch up this,
Okay,
Thank you, Richard.
moving on to adjournment at 7:38 PM. Thank you.